Hey Avengers, thanks for tuning in today. If you're tuning into our YouTube channel today, you're going to see a little bit of work on our 1995 Stealth Turbo shop car here. This car is a little bit special to me. One of my cars that really piqued my interest in these vehicles. It also has twin GTX 3576 turbochargers, a really big fuel system for E85, all-wheel drive, automatic, and a lot of other goodies that's really helping us drag race. We've already run 10s with it. The goal is to run somewhere in the mid-9 to high-9 range next year. But that's kind of getting ahead of ourselves. Today we need to put our flex plate back on. This is a Kiggly SFI approved flex plate. Kiggly is one of the pioneers in the W4A33, which is the all-wheel drive automatic present in the Mitsubishi Eclipse GSX and other cars like that, which also happens to have the same internals as the W4A33. They came in the Mitsubishi GTO SR cars, which were available in Europe, and Japan, and other parts of the world, where all of the GTOs, 3000 GTs, were actually all-wheel drive. So really North America was one of the few places that got a front-wheel drive setup, to our, not our benefit for sure. So these SR transmissions basically have exactly the same internal dimensions and parts as the Mitsubishi Eclipse transmission. So luckily those guys have run very, very low 7s with those transmissions. So there's a lot of beef up parts. Even though the torque of the V6 can stress some parts out, and the lower revving nature of it, and also the way of the car, all those things kind of take into factor to where you're going to want to build your W4A33 stronger than you think you need. We've already broken a rear drum, stuff like that, just running 10s that you're not really supposed to be breaking until you're down in 9s and 8s and stuff. So we've got all the goodies on ours. We can build a W4A33 for you. Darren Thomas Racing also specializes in those, but we can build one for you. We built our own. We are also starting to build the front-wheel drive automatics for the Stealth and 3000 GT as well, because I know there's not a lot of places left that do that, and so we'd love to help. So one of the weak points in these transmission setups is the flex plate. I think this is approximately 50 to 75% thicker than an OEM one. There's also a lot more material. The OEM one has got like this X shape to it, and they tend to crack where the X is made. And so not only is this SFI approved, so if you're doing NHRA sponsored drag racing, that's a good thing, but it is just brutally stronger. Should have no problems breaking this. A lot of people have broken the stock flex plate, even at like 400 or 500 horsepower. And so they used to run 2 of them stacked up, and that's not optimal because it is a 3-dimensional shape and it kind of messes some stuff up. So we can help you get any Kiggly parts you want. We are a dealership for Kiggly Racing. They've been great to us. They ship really fast. If you order anything off our site, the order goes in right away. You should get it shipped in a couple days type of thing. This is an 8-bolt pattern. You can see here. So this does fit the 6G72, 6G74, maybe the 6G75. It does fit the flywheel. In fact, I know it'll fit the 6G75 because the crankshaft will drop into a 7.4 short block, so that's true. So these have more bolts than the 4G, which is really good. It also means that you cannot just take a 4G flex plate and put it on your 6G72. The bolt pattern's different. By the time you try to adjust that, it's not going to work. And I think the spacing here is a little bit odd too. It's more like the 2G, 4G, 6.3, 7-bolt cars. But the good news about the 8 bolts is these aren't quite as likely to walk out, particularly because the V6 is quite a bit smoother than a high revving balanced shaft deleted 4-cylinder. But we're still going to put red Loctite on this, and I still torque them a little over spec, which we're going to show you in just a minute. I torque these to 70 foot-pounds. I believe the OEM spec is about 56 with red Loctite. And, I know it's called permanent Loctite, but it really comes out pretty easily. It's nothing to worry about. It gives you a little bit of peace of mind. This also has, and you can see we've got a few seasons on this one. It's looking dirty, but it's great. This has 8 bolts for your torque converter. So if you run a billet precision torque converter, which I'll show you here in a second, on a billet precision torque converter here, this has 8 lugs as well. The stock unit only has 4, and so they're very prone to not wanting to stay together at that kind of high power levels, high speeds, high RPM. This also has a custom pilot. The 6G72 and the 4G63 have different pilot sizes. The inside diameter of this piece that I made last year, 2 years ago, is the size that these normally come at. And so this would be really loose and into your crankshaft, and that would allow your torque converter to not run concentric to the center line of the crankshaft, which is very bad. If you're turning 7, 8, 9,000 RPM with a 25-pound torque converter full of fluid. And there's nothing supporting this on the end and nothing ensuring that it doesn't move just a little bit in the bowl holes on the flex plate. I think that's bad for business. I would not want to be in the car operating like that. So we made this out of a bulk 4G63 pilot bushing, but the outside diameter on this spacer is a lot bigger in the 4G63, so we just had to turn this down. This one's been beat up pretty good, so you can see I probably wouldn't use that again anymore. But the 6G72 doesn't run a pilot bushing at all. So what they did was they made the snout on your torque converter bigger. So we worked to precision just to get a custom snout put on these. So if you want to get a torque converter that fits a little bit better, give us a call. We can hook you up a precision torque converter. We're dealers for them as well. And it will have the correct piece to directly slide into your crankshaft. This is a spacer from a 6G75 Montero. Might be a 7.4, doesn't matter. This is the same size as your 6G crankshaft register. And you see here, that fits pretty good. It's a little bit, it could be a little tighter maybe. I made this on a manual lathe. I'm not that talented. But you can see here, with the precision one, we have a very good fit here. So that's not going to go anywhere when this gets in the engine. So that's great. So this eliminates a point of failure, eliminates you have to custom make this bushing, and extremely eliminates don't run a 4G63 torque converter in your 6G72 without doing something. Okay, I guess I could tell you how we made this piece if you want to hear sometime. Wasn't that hard. You get any machine shop to make it, but ideally you'd get a 6G specific converter that's already got this snout the correct size. They've also done something recently here. I know it's getting a little long-winded, but Precision has managed to accomplish two things with this torque converter. They've taken 3 pounds out of it, which this used to be much thicker here and not just had these standoffs. It was solid. And they've also gave us a lot more room here. So if we look at this, this will bolt up. The bolts are slightly asymmetric, so you got to get that lined up perfectly. This is going to bolt up to our crank, and actually like that. You can see here from the witness marks where we had the bolt heads before. This goes on the engine like that, and then your transmission and torque converter slides up like that. Well, with the older design of the precision converter, this was super tight. You can see little rub marks here, which is not optimal because it doesn't give your flex plate room to flex, and which is hard on your thrust bearings and your torque converter and things like that. So this is a lot better setup. I'm glad that Precision is not just making things the way they've always made them. They're continuing to improve this product, and we're excited to run this one. Since it's 3 pounds lighter, should get a little bit quicker up on the two-step, a little bit better revving, and particularly we have all this room now, whereas before you kind of had to flatten this out a little bit, which I wouldn't recommend. So this is a lot better configuration. So let's go ahead and put this on. See here, this basically goes like that, and I need to rotate this until I find the section where all 8 bolt holes line up. So don't be scared if you get this in here and you're like, oh my, the bolt holes didn't line up. I mean, that happened to me first time, and I'm like, dang it, you know, because not a lot of people are running this object. Didn't know if it's perfected yet, but that lines up. And you're gonna want the torque converter bolts from an auto car, as the manual ones are too long. You probably could run the OEM flex plate spacer and then get away with running the manual bolts, but I would rather not run any extra parts in any car. Basically, if you don't have a part in the car, it can't go bad. So let's keep this clamping situation as simple as possible. So we're just going to start our bolts. Of course, like most things, you're going to want to start all the bolts before you proceed to tighten any one bolt. So there's that crankshaft register I was talking about before. This is a BC billet crank, but this is cut the same. So your torque converter is going to slip right on in there and be fully supported by the crankshaft, which is what you want. You want to make sure you got your dowels here, which we do, so your transmission is not ever has an opportunity to be outside the center line of your crankshaft. That is a sure way to have a bad time. Manual, kind of the same thing. You know, if you're working on a manual car, of course, It's important to make sure your crankshaft flange and everything's clean and the dowels are present and everything's put together very carefully. Really, most of the problems in these manual transmissions are from clutches. They're not working properly. And most clutch problems are from poor installation. So we're going to go ahead and snug these down here in a minute. I might go grab a little 3/8 impact to where I'm not really tightening them, but we'll get them snugged down. A couple of things to note. This is a front wheel drive starter plate. It's from a stick, but they're the same. You want one that has this, I believe that says 533 on it. Your Getrag plate will not work. You have to end up removing the portion of the starter plate that actually locates your starter, and you'll grind the teeth off your flywheel. And much like some other Chrysler products, muscle car products and things, the teeth for the starter is actually on the torque converter and not on your flex plate. So it can get extremely expensive to replace the teeth on the torque converter, and you can private message me how I know that. But you may believe that your bolts here are enough to locate your starter. They are not. The nose of the starter actually slips into this half moon shape, and that's what locates it. That's why there is a starter plate here. It's dowel located here to the engine. Then your transmission flex plate torque converter are located to the center line of the crankshaft, and your starter is located to this cutout. If all that's correct, your starter will work. If your starter gets 1/16 of an inch out of alignment, you will start eating the teeth off your possibly expensive flex plate. So we'll probably fast forward through this because you probably don't want to see me tighten all that up. And kind of there you have it. Pretty simple. We got our flex plate fully torqued. When you're doing any of these kind of things that didn't come from the factory this way, just double check everything. Make sure this bolt's going to clear. The factory fastener will clear, but you know, what have you got going on? I don't know. Make sure that it clears your oil pan. It's extremely close, honestly, to your oil pan where that cutout's at. But it all looks like it's going to clear just fine. And we'll be able to put our transmission up in here with our torque converter. But stay tuned for our next little video. We're actually going to pull the bumper off this car. Revenge Performance is the place to get the parts and the advice to help right the wrongs on your vehicle. We partner with the industry leaders in parts distribution and warehousing to get you the best possible prices, the widest selection of parts, and the fastest shipping. With our real-time inventory on our website, if we say we have it in stock, it's ready to ship. From us or from our many national distribution partners. With hundreds of thousands of parts available, I guarantee we can get revenge on your ride.